implications for the library. So a patron might respond better to visual directions and schedules. So anytime you might need to draw a picture, or anytime you can have a visual, and I have some of them here with me today, might be really helpful, especially if you have a student who's really fixated on something, and like sometimes in classrooms they're fixated on the computer, but we're not having computer time, so we just put a picture of the computer with a circle with a cross around it, and then it's like, oh, look, it's closed, instead of you always having to say it. They might not understand, children or patrons with autism might not understand the spatial boundaries also. They might stand too close to somebody, or they might have a lot of difficulty being in a large group, especially if you're doing some kind of meeting or some kind of story time. So we want to make sure that that they may need to sit on the peripheral, like kind of on the edges if needed, or they may need to sit kind of right up front, but maybe not like right in the middle of everybody, because it might be a little overwhelming for them. And also, sometimes children with autism need to know where their body is in space, so they might be more comfortable sitting in a chair. And even though other children are not sitting in a chair, that child might need a chair, so that might be appropriate for them to do, because it's easier to know where your body is, because if they're sitting on the floor, the next thing you know, they're laying on the floor, they're leaning into the person next to them, whereas a chair really helps you know where your body is. They might have sensory overload with too many people, bright sounds. We talked about this before, sensory integration. And so like I said, they might need to sit on the peripheral for that. And then I also have some fidget toys. And if you think about it, what we do also to keep ourselves engaged is we fidget all the time, right? I kick my foot, I twist my hair. I might do this. Maybe put the pencil in my mouth. What do you guys do for fidgets? Tap your pen.
I twirl my bracelets.
Twirl your bracelets. Okay. Anybody else? What do you do?
I point my toes.
Point your toes. Okay. Ex-ballerina here. Yeah, because we're trying to wake up our body, especially with a light off or something. So children and patrons also need to be able to do that too. So they might have difficulty attending to long periods of time, and we need to alternate the types of activities. We need to make sure that when we're doing story time, and oh, there we go, I knew there's something wrong here. When we do story times, or when you have a field trip for students with disabilities, you might want to think about, are you having quiet activities and then having a more physical active activity instead of just all sit down quiet activities, because that's a little bit hard, and I'm sure as librarians you probably already know that. So here's some more about implications for the library, and if you look in your packet, it's on the right hand side after the very first page, the pledge. It's called Communication Diet Steps for Students with Autism. And Jennifer, this might be something that will help you also. Okay, so like we said, there are some students with autism who are completely nonverbal, and then there are some students with autism who are talking so much you can't get them to be quiet, right? So they might not understand your spoken words, or they might have trouble expressing their wants and needs also. So what you can do is use this communication diet steps, and it's kind of just like you think about a diet, okay? Slow down. When you're talking to a patron or a student who has autism, you want to slow your words down a little bit, speak directly to the student. Cut out the fat. So remember we talked about all those personalities on television, saying sarcasm they might not understand, using idioms or inferences and exaggeration, they might not get that. So for instance, wow, it's raining cats and dogs outside. We said that to one student, and the student would never go, didn't want to go outside because he thought dogs and cats were going to come out of the sky. So, we have to be really careful, because a lot of students with disabilities and autism especially, they take things very literally. So you want to make sure that what you're saying is not an idiom, especially that cats and dogs things. Okay, balance the diet. And what we mean by this is that words alone are not communication. You want to try to pull in as much visual as possible. Okay, what studies have shown is that the visual part of the brain in a person with autism is highly active, whereas other parts of the brain, such as recognizing faces and facial expressions, are not active. So one of their strengths is to be able to understand visual and pictures. And that's why we see children at the age of 3 reading, Okay, they're able to understand the visual of the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, but if you say, what did you just read, or you ask them a question about what they just read, they might not be able to comprehend what they read. But it's just the visual that they're looking at. We talked earlier about giving the student adequate time to digest, so making sure that you're pausing and you're waiting when you're giving directions, making sure that you're giving a child and students time to respond. And a lot of times, it's recommended to do 10 seconds and try it. I encourage you to try it. Just count to 10, and let me tell you, it's so hard. You just want to say the direction again, but really count to 10 and then say the direction again. If that doesn't get it, if you can draw the direction, or if you can say it, restate it in a different way, maybe in simple terms. Okay? And then the very last one is for students who have autism. You want to make sure that you stop whatever activity it is that you're doing before the child gets on overload. And sometimes that's really tricky to determine. Yeah, especially if there's sensory overload going on. If you go past that point that then the student can handle, that's when you would tend to have a meltdown. Okay, and that comes with a lot of experience and time, but let the child, if the child is giving you signs that they're not able to sit, then maybe they can move and go do another activity. Okay, all right. So I hope that that's helpful for you. And it's, you know, I'm sure that at one time in your life you've been on a diet, so you know what cut out the fat means, and you know, these are just some easy way to remember it. And then the very last one is sometimes they have difficulty adapting to changes in the routine. And sometimes it's important to make sure that we have all the steps kind of written down for them, and have some steps as far as like a story time or a field trip about the activities that you're going to do. Very similar to like an agenda for a meeting. It's very similar to that, and that will help a student. And I have some examples of that I'll show you a little bit later. Anything that you want to ask about autism? Is there anything I didn't cover? And by the way, I don't think I said that autism happens 3 times as much in boys than it does in girls. You know, being really honest with young children, I think, is really the most important thing, and actually answering their questions about why is he doing that, or why does he have a chair and I don't have a chair? Because he needs a chair. You know, it's all about what the child needs. So yeah, it is pretty tricky. Okay, so I added ADHD in here too, and ADD, because especially for when you have groups of children and they're sitting there listening to the story, you're going to come across some children who are really having some difficulty with this. And again, this is a neurobiological disorder, so it's a brain disorder. And just to let you know, this is diagnosed by a medical doctor. It's not diagnosed by educators, or maybe a psychologist or a medical doctor. So it's not something, it's not a term that anyone who's not a medical doctor or a psychologist wants to throw around lightly. Okay, ADHD is really a medical diagnosis. Typically, it's diagnosed in childhood, and it continues throughout adulthood. And with this, they have trouble focusing and behaving, and it continues into learning difficulties. So of course, if you can't sit down and pay attention, it's going to be very difficult when they get into school. And I don't know how we decided that school is sit down and learn, right? And it's very difficult at that point, and they might have some difficulty learning at that point. So let's see, their students, they may have difficulty paying attention, get distracted easily, constantly moving. So these are the children that you see that have difficulty sitting. They're leaning against other people. They also have impulse control difficulties, so this is also a child who talks out frequently, talks out of turn. We can put some things into place. I'll show you about that in just a couple minutes. And interrupting others and appear not to listen. So these are all just kind of the symptoms. Okay, so implications for the library is if we have some poor attention, and there are some fidget toys that you can actually give. So here's just a few fidget toys that are what I would call probably non-intrusive. They're probably not going to, you know, throw them across the room in the middle of your story. No guarantee. And they're not very noisy. So there's a lot to take into consideration when you're giving fidget toys. So sometimes we use, and you can share them around and stuff. Sometimes we use those slinkies, but you know what? The kid's sitting there going like this, and it's making so much noise. They also have clicky ones where you click, and it clicks. That's something you're probably not going to want to do. What we recommend is that you have a bag or a basket with some fidget toys in it. And when you notice that there's a child who's doing a lot of fidgeting, you might want to go ahead and ask the child to go pick a fidget toy. Okay, or before your story time starts, you might want to talk to the parent and say, here are some fidget toys that are going to help your child pay attention a little bit better. And we do this all the time. And we sit there and click our pen, we tap our pen, we fidget all the time. So why not allow kids an appropriate way to fidget? And I have more information about that. This ball one actually is for sitting. I don't have a, can I borrow your chair? Thanks. So this ball one is for that kid who has trouble sitting and is always moving. It just gives them a little bit of input so they can rock a little. I know it's really crazy, isn't it? So that they can rock a little bit and it gives their body a little bit of input. And it's just a beach ball for $1 at Dollar Tree. Now they do have what's called a sit-upon, and it's like $25 that you can buy, and it's just filled with air and it's plastic and it's not going to break as quickly as this one, but you could use that if you wanted to too. Okay, so these are all fidget toys. Please feel free to share them. This is my favorite right here. I actually have this one by my desk, and I'm a fidgeter. And I also get up and stand in the back of the room most of the time too. So this is my favorite. It's really not intrusive. It doesn't make any noise. This one over here is another one of my favorites because you can like put your finger through it. And actually when you're engaged in doing something like that, it actually helps you to focus better. You think, oh, the child's all they're going to do is play with that, but actually they're listening at the same time. It helps regulate your body. For children who have ADHD, they might have difficulty understanding the rules, and this could be for children who have autism also. And we have a very nice visual reminder here, and these are expectations that we got from San Jose Library. Some of the expectation for a story time: sit down, hands to self, use your ear for listening, eyes are for looking, use your words, just not all the time, and then for like a play and stay, a cleanup. So these are the expectations that we created with San Jose librarians. And we have them in larger pictures also. And this is something that we'll talk about at the end for maybe some next steps. If you want some of this, we can support you with this. Okay? And it's really nice, instead of just saying the rules, here are pictures of the rules, and they're all written in the positive. Okay, so instead of saying no talking, we say be quiet. Okay, we take out the no, because that's what kids do. They take out the no, and then what do they hear? Talk. And we don't want them to talk. Okay, so everything's written in the positive. Okay, we've already talked a lot about hearing loss. I just want to make sure that we're making sure that we're talking in front of looking at the person, like we said before, tapping the person on the shoulder. And I want to give you a really good example of that. I was in Joann's fabric store. And there was a customer at the cash register. He paid for his whatever materials he bought, and he started to leave, and there was $1 on the floor. So the person ahead of me in line said, "Hey sir, hey sir, hey sir." Nothing. The guy didn't turn around because he was walking away. So what I did is I went up and I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned and looked at me, and I said, "Here's your $1, you left it on the floor." So I realized that he couldn't hear, and he had his back to her. So I just tapped him on the shoulder. So you want to make sure that if you know somebody has a hearing loss, to make sure you're able to see them and they're able to see your mouth, and then to do some tapping if you have to get their attention. If you can use any kind of visual cues, and as far as pointing or gestures, or if you know a little bit of sign language too, that would be great also. Okay, we've already talked about physical disabilities and the space that's needed. We talked about when a wheelchair is going forward, it needs about 3 feet. And then if they're trying to make a 180-degree turn, it's approximately about 5 feet. And so that's something to take into consideration when you're doing meetings, or when you have extra boxes in the library. And we talked, it really affects more school librarians than it would the public library, because you guys are all well aware. And that's from the ADA accessible guidelines, which I assume that the guidelines that you spoke about, those are probably the same ones. Okay. Okay? And it really does depend on also how big the wheelchair is too. If it's, you know, a really large motorized one, it's going to take more space than a smaller one like this one right here. We've talked about some invisible disabilities already, like ADHD. You're not going to, somebody walks in, you're not going to be able to tell right away if they have ADHD. So if they have some kind of internal disability or some kind of internal medical condition you might not be aware of, like multiple sclerosis, MS, right? You might not be able to see that. And so it's really important when somebody comes to you with a need to not make judgments, because they might have an individual, how do I say it? Invisible disability, and you might not see it. Okay, so you might say, well, that person looks perfectly fine. Why can't they do this? Okay, just if you can, just ask them, how can I meet your need, and just go ahead and meet it. The whole point here is to never assume anything, and I'm going to give you an example, and it's a personal example for me. I was in a grocery store, and I asked the person who worked in the grocery store, could you please lift some water for me, because it was, you know, the 36 bottles of water, and could you please put it on my cart? And he said, no problem, and then he started to walk away, and he goes like this. Yeah. And so I just looked at him and I said, I want you to know I have a neck injury and it affects both of my arms down my nerves, and yes, I look like I don't have a problem, but I do, and I would just really appreciate if you would just put that on my cart for me. And he just said, okay, no problem. And I was just like, that was really insensitive. And I was going on vacation. It was like my first day of my vacation, so I didn't talk to the manager, but I probably should have, because that was really disrespectful on my part, on his part. And so I just say that to you just so that you can really be aware that just because somebody looks like they don't have a disability doesn't mean that they don't have a disability. Okay? I actually have what's called dysgraphia, which is inability to write. And so everything that you see today was done on voice recognition system. All the papers that you have, I actually use Dragon Naturally Speaking to do them, because I do have a disability. Okay? So it's just something that's real important. So try to keep any judgments you can. A person looks perfectly fine. I don't know why they need a dog. You know, you never know. So if you could just keep judgments out. And when I wrote this, I said, you know, librarians are just so respectful. I'm probably preaching to the choir. I don't think you'd sit there and you'd go like this. I mean, I don't think most people would do that, you know, but I did want to state it, because I think it's something that will really stick, a story like that will really stick in your mind. So let's talk now about story times and also special day class field trips. When you have a special day class, that special education class, another term for it is special day class, in case you're not aware of that, come into the library. And then does anybody actually go out into a special ed classroom or go out onto a site and actually do a story time there? You do, great, okay. Yeah, when I was a special ed teacher, I had the librarians come into my class too. When we had our grant with the San Jose Library, we had to have a little bit of talk about the terminology when we're using the word inclusive story times. Story times for whoever's coming in. So if you have a group of children who have disabilities, they're coming in, they're all doing the story time. Or if you have a group and it's all second language learners, then it's a second language learner story time. But it's important that if you're going to use the word inclusive story time, that we put some definitions around that. Okay, so what I'd like you to do right now is, with your elbow partner, I'd like you to talk about what do we mean by, what do you think of when we talk about inclusive story times? So with your elbow partner, just talk about that for just a minute. Probably what you're doing at story time is the first one that you talked about, is you're assuming that it's for everyone, but maybe the public doesn't know that. And maybe the public doesn't know that it's okay to bring children who have special needs, and you know, is it okay to bring children who have special needs? So that's something that, as a library, you might want to think about. Do we want to specifically advertise for all, and what does that mean? Or do we want to continue the way we are? And I'm going to show you some actual supports that can help you if you are going to choose to go that route. Okay? So I just thought it was important to have a terminology discussion about that. Well, of course, I come from the Inclusion Collaborative. So, of course, I'm going to answer that we want all to mean all. And we want to have as much of an inclusive society as we can, because that's our mission in life. Our mission is to try to make sure that people who have disabilities are included and they're belonging and they're a member of the whole community. And that includes people with and without disabilities. Now, with that said, there are times where the special education class is going to come in here, and that's what they're going to do. And they might not be able to have another class come with them with children who don't have disabilities. That's fine. That's what I did with my, my special ed classroom. I brought them to the library. I also had the librarian come in from the public library come into the class. And then a third way that we did it is I went to the preschool next door to me. We got together and we walked to the school library, which was right there on campus. And we did that as an inclusive story time. So it is okay, but I would like to encourage you to maybe, if you want, to find a way to see if you can make it inclusive for all. We have done it with different cultures and different races, and now we're moving a little bit more towards disability now. That people who have disabilities have been very invisible for a very long time. I think it's probably about 70% don't have jobs, adults with disabilities, and we're trying to look at why that is, and we're thinking it's because they don't feel like they're a member of the community, and they don't feel like they are welcomed and belonging. And so we're starting at a very young age to try to change that, to say that it's okay if a person has a disability. We want to include them in everything that we're doing in the community. That's our mission. So I don't know if that's your mission, but that's, that's our mission. And I actually have a bibliography for you that we're going to talk about. It's 13 pages of all different types of books about disabilities, and one section is children's books about disabilities for children. And some of the main characters and the heroes and heroines actually have a disability. So that, I'll show you that information today where you can access it. The things that we use to help children who have disabilities actually help the whole class. And it helps keep everybody organized, like visuals. Think about it. What would we do without the visuals just in this library? I found the visual that said restroom. Okay, now I know where to go. And then there's a visual on the door of the lady and the men. Now I know where to go because there's an actual visual. That's what we're getting at, is that people with disabilities are invisible. And we need to start pulling in books that show people with different disabilities, just like we do with cultures now, just like we do with having the female doctor instead of the male doctor all the time. We've already done it with sexism, we've already done it with racism, and now it's time to do it with what's called ableism, which is a discrimination against people with disabilities. That's really underlying what we're talking about, is we're looking at decreasing what we call ableism, which is part of my 3-hour just disability awareness training that we do. I didn't pull it in here, but that's the bottom line of what we're talking about, is we're trying to work through those stereotypes. Okay, so we've already talked about what inclusive story time is not, and inclusive story time is not having separate story times for children who have disabilities. It's okay to do them, but it's not okay to call them inclusive story times. Okay, that's all I'm saying. It is okay to do them. As a teacher, I did them too. If you're thinking about advertising inclusive story time, you make sure that the terminology is correct when you do it. Here's why we did inclusive story time for San Mateo libraries, actually, is they actually tied it to their goals in that they wanted to raise awareness and visibility of San Mateo as an essential community asset, and they wanted to connect and attract potential library users through innovative methods. And the library users that they wanted to connect with were people with disabilities and families that had children with disabilities. So that's why they chose to do inclusive story times. So I would encourage you to maybe look at your library goals and see if there's something there that you would like to go for. Why we want to make sure that we're using adaptations and modifications in our story time is that it's really important to not only have children who have disabilities here in the library, but we also have to make sure that they have access to everything that's in the library. Just like you were talking about earlier, making sure that you have a certain height for people with disabilities with the books and things like that. We want to make sure that children are actually participating. Not that they're just here, but that they're actual members and participating. And sometimes that's a little bit difficult because their skill doesn't match what it is that is required of an activity here in the library. So when we use an adaptation, it's kind of like a bridge. it's like a bridge to the requirements of this activity. And it could be the requirements of sitting and listening at story time, or it could be the requirements of being able to see the computer so that the person can actually use the computer. Okay? So that's why we want to make sure that we're doing adaptations. And it's very interesting that people without disabilities don't do things in the same way. And let me just give you a quick example. Okay, some need glasses. I see a few of us here that need glasses, okay? Some need contact lenses. I'm assuming maybe a few of you have contact lenses. I don't know, okay? Well, some need magnifying glasses to read, to see things. Some don't need anything at all. So we, as people who don't have disabilities, we do things in all different ways. So it's really important that we keep this in mind when we're with young children and not expecting them to do the same thing in the same way, like sitting at story time, okay? They don't all have to sit on the floor, they don't all have to sit on a chair, or all sit crisscross applesauce, because even us as adults, we don't do everything the same way. And it's so sad I can't sit crisscross applesauce anymore. It was a sad day when I realized that. So that's the point, is we want to make sure that we're meeting individual needs. Now when that happens, there's sometimes this interesting thing that comes up about fairness, and we see this a lot with educators, okay? Fairness might mean that everybody does everything the same. But that's really not what fairness means. Fairness means that everyone's needs get met. My needs for my vision get met by my glasses. Your needs might get met by having contact lenses, or your needs might get met by having surgery on your eyes. But it's very different per person. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about fairness as what a child needs. So if you're having a child sit in a chair at story time instead of sitting on the floor, and somebody says, well, why does he get a chair and I don't? Well, you know what? He needs a chair. It helps his body. It helps him stay calm when he's sitting in a chair. That's it. That's all you need to say. So let's look at some of these adaptations, and if it's okay, I'd like to have everybody come on over here. I can follow the PowerPoint, but I just think it's fun to look at all these things. So let's stand up for a little while. This actually helps a child or a student feel where his body is in space. So if he's all wiggly and you just put this in his lap, okay, it's kind of like, I don't know about you, but if you sleep at night, you might want to put a pillow on your chest, or you might want to have something heavy. Or you know how you put something on your neck and it's a little bit heavier? It kind of grounds you. And so it helps a child focus a little bit better. And this is just something that you can make. Now you can purchase this, and I'll show you where you can purchase something that's much more elaborate than this. But if you have a wiggly child, you just put that in their lap. You know, you could probably even sew some of these fidget toys to it. And boy, you watch, that child could actually sit there for quite a while. So that's what that's for. So that's for sensory integration. Remember we talked about children who have autism have some sensory integration difficulties? That's for that. What this is right here, this is a big book, and it's adapted with pictures inside of it. We have all the pictures here, and there are several ways that you can do this. The reason we use a flannel board with pictures like this is to make it much more interactive, to build an even more of a visual aspect to it, and so that children can start participating even more. So one thing that you could do, and I realize that with story times you don't know how many children you're going to have, so this might not work if you have 50 kids. It might not work. I've seen, when we were doing the grant for San Jose, we went and observed. They had 100 people in one and 8 in the other. Yeah, we had to talk. Yeah, 100. That was a little bit much. Yeah, you know, we please break it up. You know, please have them sign up, do something. But 100 was overwhelming as an adult. Okay. So what you can do is you can hand these out to the children. We're going to read the book. You tell them we're going to read the book, and when you see something that matches, you need to bring it up to me, or I will ask you. So what you're going to do is you just go ahead and read the book. I'm a buffalo, and I can't read upside down. I can raise my shoulders. Can you do it too? And they raise their shoulders, so you make it interactive, and you say, okay, who has the shoulders? Who's got the shoulders? And they have to look, and you might want to point to where the shoulders are, and here's the picture of the shoulder. So what they can do is they can come up, put it on the flannel board, or actually put it right in the book. Okay? Another way that you could do it is you could have all these pictures on the flannel board, okay? And as you read it, you could do a strategy that educators do all the time, is we call play dumb. Okay, so you say, okay, you know, who can do this with your shoulders? Let me find the pictures of the shoulder, and you take a foot and you put it on there. No, that's the wrong thing. You know, it's called sabotage. You know, and it just makes it so much more fun. It makes it so much more interactive. And you know what? While they're doing story time, they're holding it. And you know what? Those kids are paying attention because they are waiting for their turn. They're waiting for the page that has the foot. So they're looking and they're paying much more attention than if you don't use visuals. Okay, and visuals are something that we use for all children who have disabilities, no matter what their disability is, other than obviously a visual impairment. We don't use this for visual impairments. So that's what this is for. We have, this is the big book. We have, this one is bilingual, so we have English and Spanish and jobs around the neighborhood. So all we did was take a picture of the hat, and they had to match firefighters, rescue animals. Who has something that looks like a firefighter? Okay, and they'll start helping each other out too. They'll say, oh, you have the hat, that's the firefighter, and they'll start helping.
It encourages more interaction. It
encourages a lot more interaction, a lot more attentive. When you can make a book more come to life and make it as interactive as possible, you're going to have a lot better attention span. Great. This one right here is another big book. Check it out. It's adapted with sign language. Okay, you're using gestures. I guarantee you're using gestures all the time, especially with songs that you're singing or books that you're doing. So why not use the correct gesture? Okay, and we do have some supports for you to learn some of those if you don't know. Yeah, in, yeah, and it really looks like, you know, on, off. I mean that, you know, in, and here's out. It looks like the gesture, doesn't it? So it's really nice. So these books, a lot of these books are adapted with these pictures, and this is actually from what we call Board Maker, which is a software program, and they have all kinds of pictures in there. And our County Office of Education has it. I'm not sure if your County Office of Ed has it. I know that San Jose Library actually purchased two software programs, so they actually have it. How about this one right here? How do you like that one?
Cool.
Okay, what's the adaptation there? Yeah. Go ahead.
Right? To be able to turn it.
Exactly. So if you have a child who has cerebral palsy, okay, and typically they might have a closed fist and might not be able to actually open books, but they can do this, right? They can actually open the book themselves, and it gives them independent skills. And all this is an ice cream scoop with Velcro. That's all that is. Okay, you could use a popsicle cleaner. You could, yeah, this one is color coded. We tend to do things a little in excess sometimes, but you could very easily hot glue this into the book. It's really up to you. We turned it into a matching thing too, where we could take these all off for children who actually do have the fine motor skills, and then they match the colors. So it's a twofer, actually, a twofer on that one. So this puzzle right here. This puzzle right here, what we did is we enhanced it by adding a pipe cleaner with the number so that a child can feel it and touch it. And then we simplified the puzzle. So see how we simplified the puzzle for a child who might have difficulty actually putting it together? Okay, so we just gave a little bit of visual. So that's if you do a play and stay afterward and you know you're going to have children who have disabilities. That would also be good for a younger student, right? Maybe a young 3 or 2.5-year-old. Okay, this book right here, this is one of my personal favorites because of course as an educator, math is something that we really work on. This is actually to help children learn how to count. So what they have to do is they have to touch each duck. 1, 2, 3, 4. They actually have to touch it one time instead of going, how many ducks? 1, 2, 3, 10, 5, 6, 7, 12. Okay, so you just touch it 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you want to take it a step further, this is another book that has a twofer. You can actually say, okay, can you find the numeral that matches? And so what you could do is if you wanted to, you could give out these numerals to the children who has the 4. Let's put it on the 4. Okay. Okay. And This would help all children, right? It would help all children.
This makes it so much fun.
Yes. It would help all children pay attention better.
Interactive story times are more fun for everybody.
They are more fun for everybody, and it's not just children who have disabilities. So here's for that little child, Jennifer, you're here, where did you go? Okay, for the, no, I don't think it was you. I think it was somebody else, for a child who talks out of turn. Okay? So, this is
Something to make them louder?
no, this is, okay, maybe this isn't a good adaptation for that one. Whoa, all right. So this could just be who's taking the turn to talk. Okay, if you've got a bunch of people, and each child wants to talk at the same time, oh, let me give you the mic because now it's your turn. Okay, and this is for that child to constantly ask that question. You can say, oh wait, you know, here this person is asking the question, this person, now you have to wait, and so you could do this. You could put a little happy face on a popsicle stick and make that the question stick or the turn-taking stick. So, you know, you can't ask a question unless you're holding it, and that just gives you some regulation as to who's going to talk and who isn't. So you'll have to let me know how that one works. So here's another one, another adaptation. If you have a play and stay after your story time, and maybe you have some children there who have disabilities, and if they have a physical disability and it's really hard for them to kind of hold a pencil or a crayon or something, all we did is we enlarged this, and we just took some foam, wrapped foam around it, and put some tape on it. And now it's a little bit easier for the child to grasp in order to write. So what this does is that this gives a child access to a toy that he might not have had access to just by building this handle up. And it's not a bad thing. Little toddlers could use that, right? Any child could use that. It doesn't necessarily, you know, just because it's on there doesn't mean that children without disabilities can't use it. So it's just a way to give a child access that might not necessarily be able to do this on their own.
So that's the same idea behind the handle.
Exactly. Same idea with this one. Handles, but there's 3 adaptations on this one. Okay, you see the handles, that's one, right? Color-coded. All we did was glue construction paper in there. Okay, children with autism, they might have a lot of difficulty trying to get the piece in, but they're going to be able to match the color. They probably will be able to do that. And then there's a third one on here, a third disability. We stabilized it by putting shelf liner. Okay, so you have a child who's maybe at the table, but things keep falling off the table because they don't have control of their body too well. But look, that thing's not going anywhere unless they pick it up and throw it across the room. Okay, but look, it's stable. And this is all this is just that shelf liner. Dollar Tree for $1. You can get it at Target. You can get it anywhere. Okay, really nice to stabilize. Did you see this one right here?
Nope.
Okay, this is, these two kind of go together, and I have the website up there for you. This is library sign language for the things that you might typically use in the library, and it's actually spelling out. So for give, you actually spell out the word give. Okay, and this is for, it's books, bookshelf, it's all things that you would normally say in the library that, you know, we wouldn't have as educators. So help, wait, it shows you how to sign those words if you want to learn how to sign things specifically. Okay, but this is actually signing each letter. In this book right here, there's 2 kinds of sign language. This is the second kind. And this is like more. So it's just, it looks like it's just a simple one thing that you have to do. Right, you don't have to spell out the whole word more. This is brown bear, what do you see? And all we did is we wrote out the words, and it says what do you see, and then you have the icons. So you have the words on the board, and then you just put the picture up there, the brown bear, and then you put it in order as you go along. And you can give it out to all the students and then take it back. You can start it on the board and you know, make mistakes and put the purple cat instead of the brown bear. They're going to really tell you all about that. So, did you see this one? This is my library, and it's kind of a social story about what happens at a library. So all the things that a student can expect to do. And this is really good, especially for somebody who's afraid to come into a new environment or doesn't know the routine of what it means to go in the library. This would be good for like a special educator to talk about and read about for the first 2 weeks before they come into your program. Or you could talk about this as you do as you're with students who have disabilities. Really great for children who have autism, who need to learn the steps of what it is that you need to do. So this could be something for a child who has to learn how to use the computer to find the books that they want. You could do something similar to this, a social story. But this one's already done. But it just does the steps of what happens.
Did you already talk about the dots?
No, I didn't talk about the dots. Can you pick one up for me? Thanks. Okay, pick the other one up for me. Watch this. Did you see that? Okay. All it is a little piece of Velcro. It's the hard Velcro. Right? And a lot of times when you're doing story time, it's some children with disability need to know where is their space. And so this is just something very simple that you could do. Just laminate the circle, put it right on the ground, and it stays. It doesn't go anywhere. Typically, Velcro will stay on most carpets. Okay. Another thing that you can use is the carpet scraps. You know, the old carpet scraps from the carpet stores. You can use those. And I would highly recommend for all students, not just students with disability, that you have some way that they know where it is that they're supposed to sit. Now granted, when you're doing a really huge story time with 50 people, it's really hard to do that. But if you have a manageable size, which hopefully you do, because it's really hard to focus when there's so many people. So it's really great to do that. And you can use those for some children who have difficulty paying attention. You could have some children sitting in chairs if they need to know where their body is in space, and you could have some children sitting on the floor.
I'm having a difficult time convincing people that we need to have more and smaller story times.
Yes.
Can you recommend about how many children you think is the maximum? That would be good.
Wow. Because okay, that's another tricky question, because sometimes the parents come, sometimes it's just the class, sometimes it's the preschool that's got 50 kids.
So what I've been doing is counting families.
Okay.
And sometimes a family will be a mother and a child, or sometimes it'll be
sibling.
grandma, grandpa.
3 kids.
3 kids, yeah. Yeah.
But just in terms, so that I can say, well, at the workshop, we recommend
Ooh, she's going to pin me down, huh? Well,
how many families would...
I can't really answer that question specifically, because it also depends on the size of the room and the types of activities that you're doing too. If it's very, very interactive like this, versus if you're just reading a book, depends on your activities. I can't answer that question, but how about we open it up to everybody else? What do you think is a manageable size for, let's think of families?
My perfect story time, I think, is 25 individuals. Whatever age.
Okay, as 25 individuals total.
room.
Okay, so that might be 5 families, it might be
That's
10
my ideal.
families.
I like
Okay.
And what age?
I do a toddler story time, so between 2 to 4 years old. Some babies in strollers, I guess I don't count them, and adults, but we count numbers of people, So
Okay, so somebody else, what do you
my
think?
ideal.
There are circumstances in communities that make you go over that limit.
Of course.
I mean, I don't
Of
limit
course.
it to that. That's just what I
Right,
like.
that's just your ideal.
Sometimes
You're just saying
I'll
your
have
ideal.
30 or
Right,
whatever, but-
right.
So-
It really, for me, it really depends on the space.
Okay,
And
Yes.
some places where I do story times, 25 would be excessive.
okay,
Other places, I had 50 downtown on Monday and and that was excessive. I mean, it was
Yeah,
really overwhelming for me and the kids. And we had a very active, we didn't have a craft plan, we had a very active activity plan. And
Yeah.
everybody really liked it, but it was, I felt,
yeah.
And I'm thinking of in terms of what's best for the children as far as overstimulation.
Yeah, and 25 people, more than 25 people can be overstimulating, but yet at the same time, if it's a large enough space, if you have all your activities, you've got lots of different things that you're doing, it really depends. But I know that when we went to see one story time that was over, I'm not kidding you, 100 people, I just couldn't believe it. They were just just clicking. I saw them, they had a clicker, and they were clicking as people came by, and I went over and asked her, and she said there was 180 people in the room.
180?
I'm not lying to you. So and it was a huge room. So the recommendation that we made is that you break it up, and in this instance, you might want to have people sign up for circle time. And I know that's not ideal, but 180 is, I was overwhelmed. I could barely stay in the room. I just got to be honest with you. I could barely stay in the room.
I had a baby program with 109 people. And it was, before that, it was like in the 70s and 80s. And I kept advocating for breaking it up, but it was always, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough staff. So finally, when it hit the 109, it was beyond the room capacity allowed by the fire department.
You're like, yay, thank you for the fire department, yeah.
So finally, I instead of talking about what's best for the children,
you had to go to safety.
I said safety. I said, this is not safe.
Yeah. So you have the whole system.
So you need sign-ups now?
Yeah.
So no, I don't have signups. What I do is I have 2 programs back to back, and the first 20 people that come, the first 20 families go in, and out in the picture book area, we have a lot of educational toys where the kids are playing, and then we switch.
Okay, so that's a great op. Yes. So half the people are here, half the people are there, and then you switch.
And so then
Great solution.
And the second programs we've been having, 20 is the cutoff for the first, and then about 16 or 17 families for
Okay.
the second, and it's so much better because I was having problems even finding a performer who would come.
And with that many people, you would call them a performer. Definitely. Let's come back to our seats now. Okay, so here's just some pictures of those circles. Those are actually taped down to the ground, but obviously that would not work in the library, so that's why we just recommend the Velcro. Here's the carpets. This is also for movement back and forth. It's just, feet on the floor so that students know where they're going. There are some other kinds of things that you can adapt your story time, and one that Jane just said is to break it up, which is a really good idea. Have 20 people and then have the next group come in. You can shorten the length of story time too. You can allow more time for response from the children if you have a smaller group. Slowing down the pace of story time is something that's also important for people and children with disabilities. Also making sure that you have a good balance of a physical activity and a quiet activity, a loud activity and a soft activity. So making sure that you're doing that, and I'm sure you're already doing that, not reading like 3 books in a row or something like that, breaking it up. This is a story time schedule, very similar to Ginny was talking about. She has an idea of what it is that she's going to do. This is actually a schedule to help everyone know what are the activities that you're going to do and in what sequence. This will really help support the English language learners. It's going to help support children who have autism, children who have attention deficit disorder. Okay, here are the things that we have to do, and then what you do is when you're done with each one, you take off the welcome and you put it in the all done box, okay? Then the next thing you do your story. Look, we're done with the story now. You take it off and you put it in the all done. How many more things do we have to do? It becomes a nice learning math activity thing. It's just like when you go to a seminar and they have the agenda on the wall, and then when is your break. When you're going to be leaving at 4 o'clock, okay? Children don't have that, and they have a very difficult time anticipating what's going to happen when. And this is something that we highly recommend to start using if you're not. And realizing that you're very flexible. You have to go with where the children are going. So if they're real antsy, you just take the finger play and you move it up before the book. That's all. We still want you to have the flexibility to go with the flow, but it makes a visual aspect to it. It will really help children with autism tremendously. If you don't take it off and put it in the all done envelope, that kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to let you know, we'd rather have you make sure that you take it off and put it in so that children can anticipate. It's kind of a time anticipation for them because a lot of them can't tell time.
Kids at home, I use this with my nephews. We just did it, written.
Yeah.
And I'd have a box, and they could check off.
Exactly.
The box. So
exactly, and you could do that for a student who's trying to learn the steps of something. Here are the steps, and you just check it off as you go along, so that way you're not having to show the student how to do it every couple minutes.
I do mine, I switch around the books and things depending on how many kids there are, but I do the
Yes.
same pattern. They know the pattern. I mean,
Great.
they'll say, no, we're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, and if you're off on the pattern, they're going to let you know.
And they'll say, next
yes.
we're going to sing. And they'll,
See, that's predictability. That's really best teaching.
Little kids.
That's
Little
great.
kids, and they'll-
That's really great. Yeah.
Great, it's time for the song. Okay.
And so you could do, since you already do that, this would just be a logical next step for you. Yeah, just to show them. In your handouts, behind the sensory bin, there's 5 little monkeys, and it's actually the correct sign language for it. Okay, so I'm sure you're singing songs and you're using gestures anyways, so if you want, you might want to use the correct sign language to do it. It goes something like this. Okay, 5 little, but I just do little like, how to little. Okay, 5 little monkeys, that looks like monkeys, jumping on the bed. 1 fell off and bumped his head. No, wait, no, bumped his head. And Mama called the doctor. Doctor is like you're taking your pulse. Isn't that great? Called the doctor, and the doctor said, and I just do no like this, even though no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So some signs are natural, like this looks like monkey, right? This, you think of bed. And then there are some signs where you're like, well, how did they figure that out? I don't know, so.
We're
Anyway.
doing half of these anyway.
You're doing them anyways. You're putting gestures to them anyways. So, why not use some sign language that some kids might recognize? And, it just takes it to the next level. Okay, so San Jose Library, just want to give you some of the results of the grant that we did with them, because like I said, they had to do 3 inclusive story times throughout the whole time, throughout the year. They actually exceeded that and did many more, and included children who had disabilities. And this is from the grant what they said. The visuals and songs made the story time interactive. They like putting the pictures of sequence of the events. That's that schedule that I showed you. The kids can anticipate the next activity and feel a sense of completion when you take it off. They liked how the expectations were laid out at first, and how you could always refer to them. Okay? And the pictures shown on the board made my kid more entertained and focused. That's from a parent. So having the pictures, all these pictures in the books, and then kids were interested the whole time. So that's just some of the results from the grant that we did for San Jose. The Santa Clara County Office of Education has some resources for you. And what San Mateo did is they actually, after we did our seminar for them, they actually had a field trip and brought about 7 librarians to the Santa Clara County office, because we have some resources there. That might be something you want to do. It might be something you don't want to do. It's really up to you. I just want to tell you what things we have to support you. So we have a whole learning multimedia center, and we have a make and take center where you can actually come and make a lot of these things that you see right here. Okay? Now, we have adapted books. We actually have probably about 15 books that you can purchase, and you can also purchase the pictures of the adaptation. Okay? So you buy the book, you buy the pictures, and then you can stay there and you can laminate everything or put it right in the book and make the adaptation yourself. Okay? And that's actually this handout right, let me see. Okay, where it says adapted books. You can see all the titles. We already have the books. We already have the pictures made. So don't reinvent things. If you want to have some adapted books in your library, you're more than welcome to just come. Here's the price of them with the pictures. And then if you want to come back here and do laminating or go somewhere else and do laminating, you're more than welcome to do that too. Okay, so you can see we probably have about 15 books all ready to go. You just have to make the adaptation. In addition to that, these big books that you see right here, we've adapted 20 big books for San Jose and also for San Mateo. These are the ones we already have adapted. So we already have the pictures for you. You can come down to the County Office of Ed. You could purchase the pictures, which is just the price of printing them out, which is probably like 10 cents a sheet or something like that. You would actually have to buy the books. And so what San Mateo did is they worked with our librarian, and they actually figured out which books they wanted. They bought the big books, they brought them over to their field trip, and they had like a make and take little seminar where they actually made the books, they made the adaptations, they put it all together, they left with 20 big books ready to go. Okay? We're willing to support you to do that if that's something that you want to do. We do not sell the big books. We sell the other adapted books, which are these nice little small ones. But we don't sell the big books, so you would have to get the big books, and then you could come to the county, and we already have the adapted pictures for these books only. Okay? So if you like these books, you can purchase them. If not, you'd have to make the pictures yourself. So the way that it works is we have everything on the computer there. So you access the computer, you go into Inclusion Resources, and you'll see the pictures. It'll say brown bear pictures. It will say itsy bitsy spider pictures. You print them out, and then you fill out a little paper that says, you know, I made 3 color copies and 10 cents each copy or something like that. And so it keeps track of that. But if you want to make all these things, it does take a lot to laminate, and you have to cut it out, you have to laminate it, then you have to cut it out again and put the Velcro in the book. So if you're going to make if you're actually going to make the adaptations there, you might want more than one person to do that. You could just print them out, bring them back here, and you know, you could go to you know, Kinko's and laminate it, or however it is that you want it, or maybe you have a laminator here. You do. You could Yeah, yeah. And then what San Jose does is they actually put them in big bags, and they share them throughout the branches. So they have a checkout system that they're using brown bear this week, and they're going to bring it back, and they do it like that. So these are just some services that we have. We can actually offer a mini make and take workshop to you if you want to bring a few librarians, and we can show you actually how to do everything there. Okay? All right, on our website, which is inclusioncollaborative.org, somebody was asking about a bibliography of inclusion resources. So you can go under training materials and publications. That's where you're going to find the bibliography. At the library that I was talking about, we have a whole section on books for children with disabilities. So you can come and you can look at the books. You can say, yes, that's a great one. I want to get that one, because you know, we all want to touch the book and see what it's like. And we have a lot of information there for books about children for children with disabilities. And we were talking about that. So that would be a great resource for you to do. We've already done your homework. So if you look on our website, there's more adapted songs like the monkey one. There's also simple sign language. If you'd like to learn about sign language, it's geared towards the classroom, but I'm sure it'll be fine for the library too. There's also, that Dawn's already found out, person first terminology there, and lots of information about adapted materials for all those puzzles and for your play and stay stuff. So this is some resources for you, and really, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Also, if you can't make it down to the County Office of Education, we can probably send you some of the pictures. You'd have to work with the librarian on that, because there would be a cost to that, so I don't know how you guys would work that out. On one of the other pieces of papers, we have flannel boards already done for you. If you're interested in purchasing those, you can purchase the flannel boards. All you'd have to do is purchase the pictures, then you would laminate them yourself. And there's probably about 15 stories there. Everything that you can download is on this side of your PowerPoint, and on that side over there, like the adapted book bag pictures, all those things, you'd have to actually come to the library, or you can call the librarian and see if you can work out a deal with them. There are some things on the website, but we don't put everything on the website though, because we eventually want people to come into the county. Next steps, it's really, I just wanted you to take a moment to think about, how can we help to support you? What are your next steps for the future, for either your story times, or how are you going to use this information actually? Here are some more resources. This is in your PowerPoint, and probably the first bullet. You're going to just absolutely love this resource. It's the Baltimore City Schools. They have 250 books that they already have pictures for, and you can download them. It's absolutely amazing. Now, we use some of those pictures to do this book, but we're kind of picky, so sometimes we change the pictures and stuff. But you're more than welcome to go on there, and you'll find, if you have different ages, these are pretty young books, you want to do older books, there's already pictures, board maker pictures on there that you can just download. So I highly recommend you go and you look there. And here are some inexpensive places that you probably are already aware of if you're a librarian as to where you can purchase some books. And all this information is right in your PowerPoint. Okay, here's a whole bunch of websites that you can use for any resources that we have. The joint library one on the bottom, you can print this out. This is this thing right here. This is my library. That's where you can print it out. And you can also print out the spelling of the words, the sign language too. That's right there. Okay? So I tried to make sure to give you lots of resources, and everything that comes to you is evidence-based practice, and there's lots of research behind this PowerPoint and what it is that we did today.